I found this inspiration and this deep interest in this company and was curious as to who owned it now. They had this incredible logo designed by Paul Rand, who also designed Steve Jobs' Next Computer logo and the IBM logo and the ABC logo, this company that went bankrupt. And so I looked it up on the internet. I realized and saw pretty quickly that nobody owned this brand. And so I applied for the trademark and the copyright. And so the trademark, which is the logo and the kind of the rights to use the name and logo, that's what I paid $275 for.
Avery, so good to see you. I'm excited to talk about this episode that's coming up. But I wanted to ask you first, Avery. You're just a smidge younger than I am.
Just a smidge.
What are the most significant corporate scandals you can remember?
Would you call the Lehman Brothers debacle a corporate scandal? I think so.
Absolutely right. So if you Google this, Lehman Brothers comes up as usually number 1, number 2, or number 3 of top 10 biggest corporate scandals in history. Often at the top of the list is the Enron scandal.
Collapse of Enron,
which was a wild, wild time and brought us an amazing documentary from 2005, Smartest Guys in the Room. It was one of the first companies where the amount of grift was so significant to the tune of billions and billions of dollars, draining people's retirement funds. I think they were making like $1 million a day just off California, all in sort of fictitious funds. And so we thought this brand was gone. And it turns out about 2 months ago, with a random tweet from the Enron account, we found out they were back. So of course we had to investigate this. One of the biggest brands in the last century, one of the sort of symbols of greed in our country, suddenly was back. And they were taking a very different tact in how they were talking about themselves to the audience. And so, of course, you and I, being investigative geniuses, went undercover to figure out who was behind this.
Deep dive.
We did a deep dive, and we found out that 2 gentlemen, Connor and Peter, who also happened to be behind the, I don't know if we call it controversy or conspiracy about birds not being real. So the people behind birds aren't real, which is definitely one of the big meme conversations over the last 5 years or so. Bought the brand, and it's a great story on how they bought it, which we're going to hear in a second. And they brought it back to life. And I think the real question, and this is the one I wanted to ask you, do Americans love a redemption story?
Absolutely. Everyone gets a second chance in the US, which is something we're all too feeling these days, Sam.
We are definitely feeling this. There's a lot of second chances. So after the break, we are going to bring Avery and my conversation with Connor Gaydos, who is one of the creators of Birds Aren't Real, as well as the CEO of the newly brought back Enron Corporation. And we're going to hear what they're up to and understand what's going on behind a brand that was seen as such a villain and what their path is to hero. So with that, Avery, are you ready?
I'm so excited to jump in. Sam, also, before we get into it, I need to know what comes to mind. What is the biggest corporate collapse that comes to your mind when you think about it?
Well, Lehman was one of them for sure. The one that kept popping into my head when I thought about this was the Volkswagen emissions scandal, which I think was like 8 years ago or something, where they were supposedly fudging all of their emissions out of their cars, and became a big issue for Volkswagen, a really dramatic branding one, but also challenged the idea of how cars were trying to green themselves to be ready for climate change, and the fact that they were just lying about it. So yeah, I think Volkswagen, Lehman, Enron. I remember there was one with a Tylenol that had like someone was like slipping cyanide into capsules way back in the 90s or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not good to get poisoned by your aspirin brand. So I think scandals, frankly, are fascinating, and I think we learn a lot. And I think there's a lot to learn specifically in this one, because the guys who bought it are not your typical corporate folks doing a takeover. These are not private equity people. These are real folks who look at the internet and virality in a very different way. And so I'm just excited to have the conversation.
I am too. Let's get into it.
Let's get into it. Right. Avery, thank you. After the break, guys, we'll come back with our conversation with Connor Gaydos from Enron.
We all want to believe in something. In Chinese, belief also means trust. We want to trust our systems and each other to explore new frontiers and build a future beyond what we know. For the past 10 years at Consensus, pioneers, builders, and dreamers have gathered together to create a new financial system where everyone has value. Join us at Consensus Hong Kong, where belief becomes real.
All right, we are back. We are very excited to have Connor Gaydos, the CEO of Enron, here. We've been looking forward to this conversation. Enron has been in the news literally for the last 2 months, and we thought no better person to have on the Gen C podcast than Connor. Connor, first of all, how you doing? Where are we finding you? What an amazing American flag behind you. This is an American company. I know this.
Thank you. Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I'm in Arkansas. So Fayetteville, Arkansas, where I live with my family. And yeah, it's been a crazy 60 days for us. I mean, we're sitting in kind of a historical position right now as the new captains of this amazing American brand. And yeah, I do have an American flag behind me. I sit in front of it every day. We can talk about the history of this particular flag, which I find very interesting. But yeah, just thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Right.
What a tease. What a trigger. Okay, Connor, we're pumped to have you. Tell us a little bit more about this fascinating history of the American flag behind you.
So, Enron did the people that were, running Enron in the late 90s did some terrible things. And none of that is we're not making light of any of that. But I think what it begs is us to think about the power of redemption and the power of a second chance. Enron wasn't just those decisions that were made by a few, bad actors, some very poor leaders, but it was the people. It was the qualities that the company stood for. And I think in a lot of ways, we're sitting in, in a time historically and culturally where, that's a topic of discussion is what does redemption look like? And so I think that, this particular flag, which I found a while ago, was flown from a destroyer during Pearl Harbor, on Pearl Harbor. So I think of it as this sort of grand metaphor of responsibility, of what it looks like when a lot of people decide, not to give up, not to let the fire consume you, but to stand up, dust yourself off and go forward with a lot of lessons learned. And so, yeah, this flag, it means a lot to me. It means redemption. And it just, we're living in a time when I think that everyone could use a second chance. So really proud to kind of spearhead that for everybody.
Got it. So it's more like the macro, like the American flag than that particular flag.
I mean, it's both. I mean, this particular flag, it actually has bullet holes in it, legitimately from, Japanese fighter planes. And I bought it from a very reputable place. And it's one of the only Pearl Harbor flags actually in a private collection. So I'm actually going to get it framed and then donate it to a museum. But for now, it's sitting behind me as we relaunch Enron. I needed this sort of boost to my morale, not that it already wasn't such a boost just to be spearheading Enron, but, zooming out and looking at the whole picture, Enron's responsibility right now in 2024, 2025, we launched 2024. So the responsibility is so great that I think for myself as a leader, it's important to remember everyone who came before me, because we're just, we're right here. It feels like this is the beginning, but Enron, was founded in 1985 with an incredible vision for what the future could look like. And so we're just here sort of carrying that forward.
So, Connor, I want to get into that a little bit. You're talking about this redemption arc. Enron reemerged 8 weeks ago after quite a long hiatus. And you had a new mission, or you have a new mission to transform energy forever. I was just reading the article about you filing to sell energy in Texas. But I guess my question is, isn't that what got Enron in trouble last time?
I think what got Enron in trouble was greed and corruption. Enron's core business was solid. It was the fraudulent business practices and the fraudulent accounting practices that really screwed them over. And it was almost this, returning to the cookie jar situation. And not to get too far into the weeds there, but I think it's something that exists currently right now in the corporate landscape at a level that I don't think we even realize. I think when Enron went down, terrible, horrible things happened, but it was almost the beginning of a new wave of, okay, look, the 90s it was so economically prosperous. But like now we're kind of taking a second look at it. Were other people doing things that were against the law? Were there other companies? And so I think Enron just sort of created this snowball effect of whistleblowers coming out and going, hey, I've been a part of, X company, whatever, WorldCom or whatever. And, I've been noticing things that are going on that we need to start to look into. And so, but the core business was solid. I mean, Boeing builds and has historically built solid aircraft, even though their planes are falling out of the sky. So.
Well put. Okay, so you're at Enron. There's some big recent announcements, such as the Enron egg. Tell us a little bit about that, Connor.
So the egg is the culmination of, I would say, 2.5 years. So I met Daniel, who's our chief technology officer, actually in Silicon Valley, and we just hit it off so well. And I was so fascinated, kind of, with his vision and outlook for the world, what this could look like. And he had this idea of a micronuclear reactor that was designed just for your own home, just sit outside of it, like an air conditioner, and power the whole thing for up to 10 years. And then as I started to think about it, because originally it's like, oh my God, that sounds like a disaster waiting to happen. But as I researched it, I realized nuclear has had a bad rap. Nuclear deserves a second chance. A lot of these things that have happened, these horrible, crises, were really just media moments. They were kind of blown out of proportion. Obviously, what happened in Chernobyl was terrible, but we have very different safety standards in the United States for what a nuclear reactor should be. And so I think that for us, we can sort of spearhead this sort of second act of what is fundamentally a really good technology. And I think the egg is going to kind of, break into that conversation, and we're going to use it, no pun intended, to kind of crack the code for how the culture and how the macro population should be thinking about micronuclear going forward. So the egg is super exciting. I'm really, really pumped for everybody to get their hands on one. We're actually giving a tour of our nuclear labs here later this week. And so people are going to kind of get a look inside, behind the curtain, of what this thing looks like. And it's definitely not a joke.
Love to hear it. You have already claimed that Enron is the world's leading company. And I think it's going to be on you two and the team to sort of deliver on that promise. But what is it going to take to maintain that title, knowing that this new sort of rebirth company is only 8 weeks old?
Yeah. I mean, I think that a lot of humility, honestly. I mean, I know it sounds counterintuitive saying that we're the world's leading company and then saying that we need humility, but I think it's true. I think to be the world's leading company, it's about setting the bar high and then actually doing the work required to get there. And so by calling ourselves the world's leading company, which I fully believe, I think we're positioned as as what could become the corporation for the future. And I'm really excited to talk about, just the opportunity that I think is out there for more people to rally around a common banner, a common sort of rallying cry, if you want to call it that. And I think that Enron is as good of a place to rally as anywhere. I think that, again, it goes back to the question, has any of us done something that we would like to have back? Have we done something that, God, I wish I could redo that. And I think that Enron is that for everybody. I think it represents the good in us. I think it represents a future where we do kind of join together and say, hey, let's give nuclear a second chance. Let's give, my Uncle Bill a second chance, or whatever. What he did last Thanksgiving was inexcusable, but I think that, he's a good guy underneath all that. And so it's going to be a tall task for sure. But I think that the people that we've hired so far have just really impressed me with just how this resonates with them, and the employees and the culture that, we're sort of walking into every day when we walk through the lobby doors. It's exciting. It's like no place that I've ever worked. It doesn't feel like a corporation. It feels like Sunday night, just won't come soon enough.
You're saying so many funny things, Connor. I love it. Well, tell us a little bit about why are you the right man for the job, for this transformation story? What have you sort of done and built in your career that puts you in a position to be doing this? And how did this all kind of come about? I'm going to guess in the 90s, you hadn't started your corporate career yet.
I had not, no. It's funny. It's like, people are, this guy didn't even know Enron. This guy wasn't even alive when Enron happened. Yeah, it's true. I also wasn't alive when, the Constitution was written, but that doesn't mean I can't believe in America. And so I think that my experience growing up in Arkansas is actually to my great benefit. I think that, I feel connected more with the core I think of this country in a way that I don't think you really can be if you grew up in a place like, I'm not going to label any city, but I feel like here to
I'm from
me,
Tennessee. I get it.
okay, yeah, it feels like, you go to some of these coastal cities and there's almost this like, it's just a flyover state, right? It's just these places they're filled with people that don't really understand like we do. And I think that, when you talk like that, you're missing the core. You're missing the kind of the pillar, a very essential ingredient in the foundation. And I would say that the flyover states are the rebar of our foundation. They're what keeps us connected. So I think that growing up here, it allowed me to kind of, think about this a little bit differently and view the things that Enron had done in the 90s with a second look and not just think about the bad, but look at the good. And so, I worked on a lot of different projects over the last 10 years and went to college here at the University of Arkansas and was able to work with a friend of mine that I met at a conference. His name's Peter McIndoe, and we built this movement, Birds Aren't Real, together. I ran the business side. It's a satirical conspiracy theory, and it was an interesting project for me. It was a passion project, and it allowed me to travel the country and talk to people, really is what it did. It allowed me to kind of meet people and ask them, what are you excited about in the future? What gets you up in the morning? And oftentimes, I would find that those answers would be very similar. There's a lot of fear out there. And I realized that there's a lot of good in people. You read in the news and you see on TV, it's a lot of it's a lot of terrible things going on. And there are bad things going on, but there's also a lot of good. There's a lot of really, really kind, loving people out there in the world and in this country. And so for me, I think that Birds Aren't Real was exciting because it showed me that not everything has to be polarizing. You can connect people in a really positive way, just with a message of love and hope. And so I'm really kind of counting on people here to think about kind of what it looks like as a whole country, as a whole civilization and society, to unite behind the banner of redemption and a second chance. Because really, that's what it's going to take to kind of get through these next, few years.
And Connor, I think when we spoke last, you talked a bit about the idea that America loves a villain to hero story, but you also were fascinated with Enron, the brand, for a number of years. So how did you actually come to acquire the brand itself and then decide you wanted to turn that into Enron 2.0?
So I'd watched Smartest Guys in the Room, the Enron documentary that came out 20 years ago. And I think from there, I was just fascinated because, I didn't know about Enron necessarily when I was 5 years old. Obviously, but watching this documentary, I was struck by a lot of the things that they were doing were like actually very smart and very forward thinking. Enron Broadband Services, for example, they essentially built the first like fiber optic internet delivery network in the country. And they had a partnership with Blockbuster, and we're going to roll out the first streaming service. And so Enron's original tagline actually was the world's leading company. I think in 2000 is when they rolled that out. So we didn't actually come up with that. The really smart genius people from 2000 era Enron, excusing the bad actors, they came up with that.
Yep.
And so I found this inspiration and this deep interest in this company and was curious as to who owned it now. It was like this company was one of the largest companies in the country. They had this incredible logo designed by Paul Rand, who also designed Steve Jobs' Next Computer logo and the IBM logo and the ABC logo. And, I think that today we're sort of inundated with logos, but even 10, 15 years ago, there weren't nearly as many logos, and these were everywhere, and they still are. They're still extremely popular and famous. So, it's not just this, this company that went bankrupt. It's not just this, small little thing that happened that only if, you were alive in the late 90s, you would have really known about. So it has transcended that. It is something that's become more of a myth than anything else. And I want to demythify it and really just sort of bring it back to its core. And so I looked it up on the internet. I realized and saw pretty quickly that nobody owned this brand. And so I applied for the trademark and the copyright. It had the IP around it. Yeah, it's interesting. It's like, what is a company? Which is a sort of a question that, we've been asking ourselves as the media has been reporting on us not being a real company. It's begged the question, like, what is a company? What does that mean? And so to me, first and foremost, we got to have a legal corporation. What's our entity? And I think it's, more than that. It's your soul, it's your heart, it's your values. But to the general public that could argue in a court, does this company exist or not? We can say, yes, Enron Corporation is formed and is incorporated in the state of Delaware. And so the trademark, which is the logo and the kind of the rights to use the name and logo, that's what I paid $275 for. And then from there, it was just a process of kind of backfilling that with all the other necessary little pieces of IP, like the domain name and the social handles, which surprisingly were not difficult to get. People really were scared of this brand, which surprises me because the reaction to it has been so positive. Hundreds of thousands of people have reacted to this extremely positively. It was this thing, it was like a flower that just bloomed, and then everyone said, whoa, we all knew that we needed to see this, but we didn't know that it existed.
And Connor,
Pretty crazy. It's a great story.
No, it's a great
It's
story.
amazing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Connor, I think, when we were talking, I was fascinated by, something you said that stuck with me, which I also wanted to bring to this conversation with Avery, who's an amazing marketer herself. But you said, that you're building this brand through the idea of satire and comedy because traditional brand building doesn't work in the same way. And so, and I wonder about the idea of a name everybody knows with yours and the people behind you, your skill set of utilizing virality and comedy to get attention. But I think people also misunderstand that, you share that you have a logistics company that is doing real business. You are filing patents. You're filing for the ability to sell energy in Texas. You've sold a ton of apparel already. You're getting into the crypto and token space, which we'll talk about in a second. All of these things are real. And I think that there's something around the idea of people doubt, but then you guys might actually deliver, that I think is really interesting in the idea of brand building. And so I just wanted to get you to sort of talk a little bit about the idea of building a brand through satire and comedy.
So defining something limits it. It limits its potential, and labeling something limits its potential. And, a use case, for example, is to me very limiting for something like what we're doing. And there's a lot of different elements and ingredients that make up this company and where this could go. Right now in the beginning, in the very beginning, we're bringing this company back. And we knew there was going to be a lot of people that were confused and like, what the hell, like Enron's back. And I mean, that's totally cool. I mean, that we're aware of that, and we love the confusion. We think that the confusion is justified, but we just want people to think about it like we're thinking about it. And so using comedy in a lot of ways, I would say that what we're doing is very serious and not funny, but there are some times when you just have to look at yourself and go, look, our nuclear reactor looks like an egg. That's pretty funny. Okay. Like we're using sort of this very real technology, which is a micronuclear reactor, and we're putting it in this beautiful, device that looks like an egg. And so I think that is able to sort of, grab your attention. It's not just this kind of air conditioner looking thing that sits outside of your house and kind of just blends in with the monotony of regular, commercial products, but it stands out. It begs you to look at it and say, what the hell is that thing next to the Johnson's house? And why is it melted snow 10 feet in a 10-foot radius around it? And so to me, that's step one. And then people realize, oh, shoot, like this is real technology. And they do have a real trucking company, and I want to ship LTL freight with them. And so it's interesting. And I'm very excited to roll out, the logistics side of our business here in the next week. So we're actually currently wrapping about 25 trucks, and we're going to be shipping the egg and other freight all across the country. And so then the energy business, which very excited to talk about. I can't talk about it a lot now, but we're waiting on some stuff to get approved and don't want to get in trouble there. But to me, that's that's Enron's promise. It's keeping you connected on and off the grid.
On and off the grid. Okay, so we've got to ask you, what does Enron have to do with crypto, Connor?
So it's super interesting. It's almost like, it feels like being Wilbur Orville Wright and looking at the Wright flyer and thinking, what could this possibly be? What could this little thing that looks like a shoebox possibly do for the world? And I think it takes a lot of different people, and you have sort of the genesis of an idea. You have the genesis of something so revolutionary as cryptocurrency and the blockchain. And then it takes sort of people, more people sort of grouping together. There's this saying that I like that is just, two heads are smarter than one. I don't know if you've ever heard that, but it's one of my favorite sayings. And it is just fascinating to think about what cryptocurrency could be with Enron. And so what, Enron coin, I think, could do for the future, it's unlimited. It's unlimited. I don't want to define it. I think that, by defining it, by trying to put something behind it, you're limiting its potential. I mean, I think that I've, hopefully done a good job of laying out where I think Enron could go. I think that all of us, I may have been the one to pick the Enron brand up out of the gutter, clean it off and put it on my head, but now I want to put it on everyone else's head. I want all of us to wear the crown of Enron and build this corporation for the future. And so I wouldn't say we're a meme coin. I wouldn't say we're anything. I would say that it's Enron coin and it's whatever you want it to be. And so for me, that could be, we want to power 50% of the entire state of Texas. Well, it's going to take a lot of energy. It's going to take a lot of people to band together and say, yes, we want that. We believe in this company. We believe in this new leadership. So the coin is super exciting to me. It's honestly, we didn't set out to do a coin, honestly. I mean, the idea for this was, to bring Enron back and do it in a very earnest way for the future, was 3 years ago. And it's been a 3-year journey. It was only in the last month, really, that we started to explore the opportunity of what could a coin do. This is the future. It seems like it is here to stay. And for the average person that grew up in Arkansas, you kind of feel like you're getting like the second dish. You're getting like it takes a minute for the blood to go from the brain to the toe. And so, once you get it, you got to kind of like adapt to it and figure out, how you could use it. And I think that in a lot of ways, not bringing sort of our industry brain to this is very beneficial. I think that is what's going to help this thing grow into not just a company, but like a movement, a revolution. So I'm super excited about the coin. And I think that, it's up to us to decide what it does.
Can you share? So you said you don't want to be defined by labels, but you also said it's not a meme coin. Like you went to meme coin first. So speculating, some people may label it as such. What are the specifics of the token and why do you think that it has the potential to outlast a lot of the sort of peers in the market?
I think that, what's going to help this thing, there's nothing technical that I think will help this outlast. I think what'll help this outlast is people that have just general goodness in their heart. As long as there's goodness and love radiating outwards from this company, I think the coin will last. Because if the coin dies, I think Enron dies. And if Enron dies, the coin dies. I mean, we're all here in this thing together. Like the coin to me is an integral part of kind of our future and where this thing could go and what we could do together. So I don't know that speculating on timeline or anything is worth it just because, for me, my main job is not focusing on how long to keep this thing going. It's focused on maintaining love, communication, our core values, redemption, being kind to each other internally within the company, and then exemplifying that for our customers, exemplifying that for the larger public. And to me, if we can do those things, the wheel doesn't move the car, it's the engine. The wheel is a vessel for motion. And so to me, we've got to create the engine, we've got to keep it running. And that's what's going to kind of fuel this deep longevity that I do believe is there.
You don't often hear the idea of kindness and love being attached to the crypto community. So I like that you're bringing that. We need to bring it.
I think it's important. I think that it needs to be everywhere. Yeah.
Agreed. So Connor, one of the things that I think is really fascinating is, in some respects, when I first heard your story, it did remind me of how many crypto projects have come to life, in the sense that a lot of crypto projects are early tests of ideology that people can get behind, and they want to fund the ideology. And then often out of that has come amazing products. So it feels like that's actually not that far off, as opposed to you taking a traditional energy company route, which might be let's build all this infrastructure first and then see if there's a customer base. You're almost going the opposite direction. Do you think that's how folks should be thinking about building companies these days?
I think that it is exactly what you should be thinking about. If you are thinking about getting into something new if you're thinking about starting a company, but I think that it's much easier said than done. I think that really it starts with your core. Like if you're getting in it, you can drill down to a lot of, if you're starting a business to make money, you hear this a lot, then like you're going to fail. If you start a business to get the accolades on LinkedIn, you're going to fail because it's hard. It's extremely difficult. And the pathway to success is pretty much touches and goes through all the cemeteries in town. And for me, it's been a long road to get here. I mean, this has been a very difficult journey just to get the team, assembled and to get people to think about, we have a really incredible team of people that have a very legitimate pedigree behind them. And so, I think that people look at me and they think that the team is like a bunch of writers for The Onion or something, but that couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, we have serious people. Just go check out our executive summary page, and it's 4 times as long than you can see on there. And so this is something that I really do believe in. And I think that if you're out there and you want to start a company, do it. I mean, this is the best place to do it. This is the best country in the world. It's never been a better time, quite frankly, with the internet. I mean, the opportunities are out there for sure. I would just say though, that, you really want to make sure that you are doing it for the right reasons, that you're doing it, if you say that you're out here to actually make the world a better place, do it. Don't just say it, and I think for us, that's what we're really trying to live by. So I would just put a pause on, let's start a company and just do it. And more so let's really connect with what that even could look like. And what does it mean to be a human and live with other humans? And is there another company that does what I want to do? And, could I just go work for them and learn for a minute and then take kind of the good elements of that, but apply it in a much more moral way. So I think it's and I talk like this and it sounds ridiculous, but I do genuinely believe it. I think that I don't go to church on Sundays and then expect to have my pastor give me tax advice. I expect to leave feeling like a better person. And I think that for me, when I go into a corporation, I'm viewing it like it should be the modern church. I should leave feeling like I was just absolutely served, like I wasn't taken advantage of, and like I legitimately respect the name and logo that I just interacted with. So I could talk all day. And so sometimes I find that I just need to shut up.
No, well, Connor, it's been amazing to hear your perspective. I feel like this is not the story that many think of when Enron comes to mind. You're doing really cool things from the egg to this token, blazing a new trail in the spirit of America, going for second chances. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us on this podcast. I guess my final question would just be, what can marketers and creators and builders sort of take away from what you're doing? Because this, idea of second chances, this idea of taking something from nothing, of entrepreneurship in a big way, I think is something that resonates with the American population right now. What can brands learn from this?
I mean, I would just have to go back to what I just said, which is it's a very busy world and there's a lot of people talking, there's a lot of information getting posted on the internet all the time. It's ridiculous, actually. It's mind boggling how much new information is created every day. And so do we want to be a civilization that is just fighting to get our little 15 seconds of fame? Or are we focused on sort of the larger issues at play here? And I think that there are a lot of big issues out there right now. And I think that, we need to put a little bit of this individualism aside for a second and tackle some of these macro issues. And marketing can really help drive that conversation. And I would encourage everybody, we've got some hurdles in the next 5 years for sure, to think about marketing as less of a let's sell a product and more let's start to sell some values. Let's start to get people connected on, we all know that, if someone trips me when I'm getting off of a train, that's bad. If I accidentally trip, it'd be terrible. And then, by the way, trains, they need a second chance in this country. I mean, we don't, do we really want a vehicle being the only means of transportation? That's a total second podcast, by the way, that we should definitely get on. But anyways, I just think that, I went to school for marketing and it's a lot about metrics. It's a lot about numbers and demographics. And, to me, you miss it when you focus just on that stuff. That's like delivering your ad maybe, but at this point, let's focus on our values. Let's focus on our core. Let's focus on when we're on our deathbed or we're, at the end of our life, if we're lucky enough to think back on, our lives, what are we going to be thinking about? You see these posts and they're very valid, of just nurses asking people on their deathbed what their biggest regrets are. And number one, it's like, I wish I'd spent more time with my family, period. And if those are people that's like 99% of people. It's not, I wish I'd made more money. I wish I'd, done this or that. And so all of the, the money and the fame or whatever you want to call it, like the next promotion, to me, it comes out of being so filled up with love and connection and your family and your friends, that it's just a bonus. It's not what I'm going towards. It's something that helps me hang out with my family more. It gives me more time. If that money gives me more freedom to hang out with my kids. So anyways, that's what I would say. And I think it's just, it sounds a little transcendental, but it's true. I believe it.
Well, Connor, thank you for spending the time with us. I feel like we learned about you as a spiritual human, as a business thinker. Birds might not be real, but Enron definitely is.
Totally.
I think this has been a wonderful time with us. So we appreciate it. We'll see you in Hong Kong for Consensus. So we're very excited
see you
to
there.
have you on stage there.
My first trip to China.
Exactly.
Hong Kong.
Let's do it.
So until then, thanks, and we'll keep our eyes on Enron.
Sounds good. Talk soon.